Good evening, one and all. So today we are in a seventh edition of our Wasl Talk. It's a webinar series, and today's speaker is passionate and driven entrepreneur, as well as business and career coach of 16 years of experience. The key achievements are a co-founder of Neo Sales Consulting. She's mentoring 200 plus aspiring entrepreneurs, and she's a author, podcaster, and super speaker participant as well. So let me welcome Sasha Lucas to take us through the Wasl Talk 7th edition. Over to you, Sasha.
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction, Salim, and a very good evening to everybody present. I'm really happy and privileged to be a part of this Wasl Talks session today. And just because of the time constraint, although I would love to get to know all of you, but I would request if you could just save my WhatsApp number, which is mentioned on the screen on the top right, and then we could probably keep in touch and network with each other. My name is Sasha Lucas, and I'm from Hyderabad, and I will talk about myself a little later, but let's just address the topic for today, which is achieving more without burnout. Now, firstly, let me ask a question here. How many of you are working professionals? If you can just type in the chat box W if you're a working professional. Okay, and how many of you are entrepreneurs on this talk? If you can type E if you're an entrepreneur. Okay, we have a lot of working professionals. And if anybody's a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home wife, you can type S in the chat box. So, first of all, talking about burnout. Now, somebody asked me, and if you keep yourself up to date with the news, especially in India, because I'm from India. So recently we had a few incidents where young working professionals passed away because of, or at least they blame it on work stress or burnout. And it was a very, very sad incident. But somebody asked me if I chose this topic because of that incident. But my answer to that is absolutely not. Because I chose this topic, or I came up with this webinar much before that. And I came up with it for the simple reason that through my working years, over the past 16 years, and my interactions with a lot of young professionals, working professionals, and aspiring entrepreneurs, what I saw was this term burnout or this scenario is very prevalent. And it's something that most people don't acknowledge or don't give importance to. But from what I've seen over the years, I think this is one of the most important when it comes to career success. And it's an issue that we must all talk about. And so I made it my mission to help or work with young professionals and try to help them out so that they don't give up and don't just settle for mediocrity over the years. So that's my mission in life. I want to work and help people become successful and help them avoid being burnt out. So with that, moving on, so one of the things, the reason why I made this mission or why I want to share my learnings through these webinars that I conduct is because I'm a very staunch believer in this quote. And although it was shared by Warren Buffett, but I'm sure that people before and after also will be talking about this. And it says it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. So that's something that I learned very early on in my career. And I do that a lot. So I'm a very keen people observer. So although I do make mistakes, and it's good for everybody to do that, and it's good for everyone to learn from their failures, but it's not necessary that you have to keep failing or keep making mistakes if you want to be successful. So that's something I learned. And now I also, through my webinars, want to share my journey, share some of the mistakes that I made so that every one of you can learn from it and you don't repeat those mistakes, and probably you can be successful in your career or in your life as well. So that's my mission in life. And moving on, let's talk a little more about burnout itself. So what exactly is burnout? Because that's a term that is very commonly used, or a phrase that's very commonly used. Now, burnout is nothing but a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. And I'm sure that every one of you would have gone through this at some point. Okay. Think about this, right? I want you to just recollect and think about any situation. Let's say, for example, you walked into your workplace someday, and as soon as you step in there, you feel all the energy just drained out of you. And you think, when am I going to get, going to go home? Did it ever happen to you? Do you ever feel as soon as you step in your workplace, you feel you want to just go home? You don't want to be there? If yes, type Y in the chat box. Okay. So I did go through this. There were a lot of times when I used to make all sorts of excuses. I used to feel like a school child refusing to go to school, even when I had to go to work. And this is what is a sign of you heading towards burnout. So it's important for us to understand what it is so that we can then deal with it and we can help ourselves get better. And let's also understand what's the difference then between stress and burnout. So does any of you know what's the difference between stress and burnout? If you do, you can just type it in the chat box. Okay. So let me just share this here. So the difference between stress and burnout is that stress is a temporary situation. So let's say, for example, at work, you have a project and you have a deadline to meet and you're very stressed about it. But then as you complete that deadline and as you submit your project or your work, and then that stress also disappears along with that work. Now that is stress. But when this happens or occurs on many occasions, or it keeps happening all the time, and if you don't deal with it, if you don't learn how to deal with it, if you don't learn how to handle these situations, then that would eventually lead to burnout, where then you don't have the energy or the inclination to deal with it anymore. So burnout is nothing but prolonged periods of stress, which leads you to the situation where you can't do anything about it. And this could be in your career, and it could also be in your personal life or your relationships as well. So it's important for us to understand and address that. So before I go ahead now and talk about myself, what I want from everybody here is to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to be successful, or you're going to do whatever it takes for you to be successful, no matter what. So if you're ready to commit and say, I will not give up and I will not quit, I will identify the issues, I will identify what is taking me to that stage of burnout, and I'm going to deal with it, then I want you to type success in the chat box. Make a commitment to yourself, type success in the chat box. Fantastic. Nice. So now let's talk a little about me, and hopefully you will learn something from my journey, and you can probably take notes so that at some point, because in 30 minutes, your life is not going to change. But if you write and you save this information and you refer to it whenever you're in trouble or whenever you're undergoing stress, then it's going to help you out. So with that, I am from Hyderabad, India. I was born and brought up here, and I'm a mechanical engineering graduate. So I finished my mechanical engineering from a very prestigious university, Osmania University. And after that, because I was from a prestigious university, I also got placed in one of the top companies in a software job. But being a mechanical engineer and then getting a software job was something that I didn't really expect. But that's the usual norm. So, irrespective of what field of engineering you do, whether it's computer science or electrical or electronics or even mechanical, most of the people end up with a software job. It's just a handful of them who end up doing what they actually want to do. But the funny thing was, I didn't want to do mechanical engineering either. So I was forced to do that because my parents asked me to. But here, there's one key lesson that I learned. I didn't have a choice or I didn't have a say in the matter when I had to choose mechanical engineering. So I had to just take it up because my parents wanted. But then when I got this job offer in hand, I thought to myself and I said, I have two choices here. Either I can go again with what my parents want me to, and I can take up a job that I don't want to do, and I can go to work every day feeling unhappy, feeling dissatisfied, and then I can blame them and the rest of the world for all my troubles. Or I can be bold today and I can make a choice and do something that I really want to do. And irrespective of whether I pass or fail, I will take responsibility and then I can actually make something out of myself. So I chose to take the second path, and that's why I took up a job in HR instead. So nothing to do with mechanical engineering, nothing to do with engineering at all. And I didn't have any experience in HR, but I gave it a shot and I was lucky enough that I got accepted in this company. They thought that I had good communication skills and they expected me to learn on the go. So I took up that challenge and I really worked hard. But after about a year, because the initial first year was a breeze, it was my honeymoon period. It was something new that I was doing. And being an HR, conducting interviews, conducting initial screenings, coordinating interviews, sending out job offers to people, it made me feel really powerful. Because I was there, I had a job, and then I was giving a job to somebody else. There was nothing like it. It just felt so great. But then after 1 year, there's something that happened. I started having a lot of questions or a lot of doubts. I started questioning and saying, what am I doing? And is this what I'm going to keep doing for the rest of my career? Is there going to be a change? Am I going to grow? Am I going to get a promotion? There were so many questions just going on in my head, and I stopped focusing on my work. I started feeling bad. I didn't feel happy. Now, I'm sure that you would have also gone through things like this at some point in your career or some point in your life. Now, usually, when these kind of situations or doubts arise, people choose either of these two paths. So, the first path being they let these doubts just stay with them, they don't express themselves, and they keep doing what they're doing. They continue to do that work just because they're dependent on the salary or just because they don't know what else to do. And they just let it keep stewing inside and eating them up from inside. Now, if they continue doing this over a period of time, what happens is eventually they will get burnt out because they're unhappy, they're dissatisfied. And when they finally leave, they don't leave that job on a positive note. They leave on a very negative note, and they leave without having anything left in them to give to their next job or their next opportunity. And the second scenario is where people take impulsive decisions, and as soon as these doubts creep in, they jump from one job to the other. Now, these kind of people who take impulsive decisions would keep jumping from one opportunity and one job to the other. But one thing that we got to understand is opportunities are not unlimited. So at some point, you're going to come across a roadblock. And it's also going to impact your careers because the more you keep jumping, the more people are going to question your stability, and nobody will trust you with a leadership role. Nobody will trust you with taking care of their company. So you're actually doing more damage to your career than good. So you'll probably go from one job to the other, get a little pay hike initially, and that short-term satisfaction is what will keep you going. But you cannot keep doing this for a long period of time. Now, when I face these doubts, again, I'll say nobody really told me, Sasha, don't do this or don't do this either. But I was lucky enough, and I did this one thing, and I really, really, think that this was lucky for me, because if I didn't do this, I probably would have been one amongst the rest. But what I did was, instead, I went and asked. And now I didn't ask my peers. I didn't go and talk to my peers or complain. Nor did I ask some family or friend who had nothing to do with my work or didn't understand what I'm doing either. But I went and spoke to my immediate manager, and I asked him about where I'm going. And I shared with him that I have all these doubts in my mind. I don't really know where my career is going. Now, normally when I tell people that I asked my manager, they usually think that the manager would have tried to retain me and given me, a promotion or the greed of a promotion over the next few months or the year. But instead, my manager didn't try to impress me. And what he did was, he in return asked me a lot of questions. And that was something that made a huge difference for me, because the questions that he asked me was, what skills did I develop in order for me to take on a different role? Or did I develop my communication skills further? Did I develop my public speaking skills further? So when he asked me these questions, I realized that all the answers lied inside of me. And in your case, it would be you. So a lot of times when we come across these kind of doubts or these kind of situations, my one big learning is that instead of looking externally for answers, we need to look within ourselves. So when I looked within and I realized that although I was doing my job on a day-to-day basis, I was doing everything well, but I didn't go above and beyond and didn't develop any extra skill. So there was nothing for me to convince my manager to give me a better role or to give me a better pay. I didn't really do anything extra. So that's when I found my answer. And that's something that I kept doing over these years. And that's what helped me, come to this position where I am today. With my first company, I also worked with companies like Deloitte and Bank of America. And I did enjoy that stint. And then you could say, hey, so then, you had it easy. You asked and you overcame that challenge. And then you, went on to do other things. You went on to work in bigger firms. But no, it's not all that easy. It was not that kind of a breeze. But what happened was, there was a company that I joined, which I will not name today. But I did go through a lot of stress. I was very unhappy while working with that company. And there I made a mistake. I made the mistake of not sharing with anyone. And in fact, I made the mistake of getting carried away, because every time I would walk into the breakout room, I was surrounded by people who had the same kind of doubts like me. And I felt very happy that I had somebody who's thinking exactly like me. And without realizing, I got attracted to a whole lot of negativity. And that finally resulted in me absconding from that job. So I didn't even have it in me to go and inform my manager and say that, hey, I want to leave. So I was so disgusted. So I said, I'm just going to leave. And I walked out. But in hindsight, when I think of it, I look at it and say, I could have done so much better. So when I looked at it, when I looked back and I thought, and I was, analyzing everything that I went through, that's when I realized I shouldn't have done that. So after that, when I worked with Deloitte, when I worked with Bank of America, it was very easy for me. So these were all the lessons that I learned. And then after that, I decided to join or start my entrepreneurial journey. And that's when I founded my company, NeoSales. And through this company now, I've been working with a lot of young sales professionals. I've trained over thousands of sales professionals. I've trained them in communication, their personality development. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. And I've also developed freshers into successful entrepreneurs who are running their businesses currently in India across different cities. And I've also developed a whole full-fledged team of recruiters, HRs, operations, digital marketing, all of that. So my learnings over the years, and especially about how to deal with these challenges, how to deal with negativity, and especially how to deal with burnout, is what has brought me this far. So the goal for today, or the goal of this webinar, is to share with all of you my learnings and to help you increase your productivity, help you build a successful career while avoiding burnout. So at the end of this session, I'll leave you with 4 power moves. Okay, it might seem really simple and trivial when I share them with you, but if you write it, and whenever you're in doubt, if you go back to these power moves and you analyze and say, hey, have I done these well? Or what can I do to make things better for myself? That will definitely give you a very positive outlook, and it will show you a good way forward. So before we go to the power moves though, let's start with a quick little quiz. I'm sure that all of you like quizzes. So I want you to identify who the celebrity is. So can you type that in the chat box? Okay. So this is in fact Beyonce. So she was a victim of burnout. There's a lot to read about her. You can go and understand how she was a victim of burnout. And then the next person, I'm sure all of you would be able to recognize her. So you can type it in the chat box quickly. Yes. So the royals also are not, or in fact, they can also be, victims of burnout. Oops. Okay, can anyone guess who this is? If you're an avid YouTuber, you'll probably know. So this is actually Lily Singh. And I'm sure you recognize a lot of these celebs. So although I'm from India, but I'm sure that a lot of you would recognize them. Shah Rukh Khan, Deepika Padukone, and Virat Kohli. So the reason why I wanted to show you all of this is the fact that, people at such high levels have been victims of burnout. So then we are also not safe either. So it's important for us to accept and then to learn how to deal with this so that we can also be successful in our lives and in our careers. So now talking a little more about burnout. So what is burnout, or the different types of burnout is they could be personal, professional, emotional, and physical as well. And how do you identify? Because if you're somebody heading towards burnout, you should be able to identify and stop yourself from heading there. So signs of burnout could be emotional exhaustion, where sometimes you just can't react to any kind of situation. So there are times where, maybe our family, they keep irritating us, they keep doing things that we don't like. And there are times where we express ourselves and ask them not to do certain things. But then at one point, you just give in to it and you accept it and say, I can't react to this anymore. Or, you've been waiting for an award at work, or you've been waiting for some recognition at work, and you've been giving it your 100%, you've been giving it your all. But then the one fine day when you actually get that recognition, you can't react to it, you can't celebrate it, you can't feel happy about it. So if that's something that happens to you, then it's definitely a sign that you might be heading towards burnout, and you must catch yourself there, make some corrective measures so that you don't reach there. And of course, reduced performance at work is a very, very big sign of burnout. So if you can understand and if you can catch these signs at an early stage, then it will prevent you from heading there. Now, let's also see what are the different causes, why this burnout happens. So I'm sure a lot of you will relate to all of this. Work overload, that's something that happens to everyone. But here I'll say, if you love what you're doing, if you love your work, or if you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing, then it's not going to affect you. Other reasons or the causes of burnout could be lack of control, not having control. So you're at work and your manager takes all the decisions, doesn't let you take any decision for yourself, then that could also lead to burnout. Or if you have unclear expectations, you think that you're doing your best, and then every time at a meeting you get caught and you get called out for non-performance. And then you sit scratching your head and think, I'm doing everything, but then why am I not getting recognized? Then that is because you have unclear expectations. And monotony, doing the same thing day in and day out, could also lead to burnout. Lack of support and work-life imbalance as well. Now, all of this is something that is, workable, it's sortable. You can actually bring yourself back or pull yourself back from it. But if you're a part of a toxic environment, and here I want you to be very careful before you label the environment itself as toxic, because you first go and check for all the other signs, and only when you think that the environment is really toxic and you can't change anything about it is when you need to remove yourself from that situation. So these are some of the reasons why burnout happens. So now I'm going to share with you a few tips and tricks that I've been using over the years that help me and that keep me really energetic, active, and really happy at work. And those solutions, I'd advise you to write it down or make notes of it so that you can implement it as well. So the first solution being energy management and not time management. So time management is a term that we've heard for a very long time. And then suddenly somebody realized and said that we can't manage time. And they came up with this term of task management. So they said, instead of managing time, you need to learn to manage your tasks effectively. So I take that to another level and say, you don't just manage your tasks, but you also manage your energy levels, because we all have different energy levels at different times of the day. So some people wake up like a zombie, and then as the day goes past, they become more active and they wake up and then they can start focusing better. But some people function very well in the early parts of the morning. So you need to identify what your energy levels are throughout the day, and then you align your tasks with those energy levels. So we'll talk about that through a little activity sheet a little later. And the next solution that I'll give you is to learn and introduce variety. So instead of complaining and saying that I'm not getting new things to do, I'm not getting new opportunities, you must learn and develop new skills. Or if you have a lot of time-consuming tasks which you think does not give you time to actually develop new skills, then you need to identify the repetitive tasks and work on automating them. So the more you automate your tasks, your monotonous or repetitive tasks, the more time it gives you to develop new skills. And finally, add creativity to your routine tasks. So these are two solutions, and I'll give you two more solutions before I get to the power move. So this is a sample task planner that you could use, where instead of just doing a regular to-do list and trying to prioritize your tasks, You first identify what your high energy time is, what's your moderate energy time, and what your low energy time is. And then you bucket all your tasks into these times. And then you can also set reminders on your phone so that you can use it effectively. Believe me, if you start bucketing your tasks this way and you put your high energy tasks into high energy time, you will be able to achieve so much more throughout the day. I can do the tasks of 5 people all by myself in one day. And that's only because I've learned how to align my energy and I know exactly what time I work best. And that's when I put in all the difficult or all the time consuming tasks. And it has really helped me over the years. Now, the next solution is to set boundaries. Now, in today's world where a lot of people are working remotely, this is of even more importance because we need to learn to set boundaries, whether it's in terms of our workspace itself or even our work time, and we make it very clear that people can't disturb us while we are at work. But even at work, it's important to set boundaries because I used to face this a lot of times. So as soon as I reach office, I have somebody coming and calling me for a cup of coffee. And then I come back and half an hour later, I have another set of people calling me for a cup of coffee. And I used to keep doing this. And I realized that I'm only having coffees all day and not getting anything done. And then I do all of my work when I go back home. And that was really affecting my work. So I had to learn and set these boundaries and say no so that I don't let my work get affected. And finally, prioritizing self-care. So in schools, usually, I'm not sure how it is in the UAE, but here there's a lot of emphasis given to attendance. And children usually take away awards for getting 100% attendance throughout the year. But here at work, we're not getting any award for 100% attendance. So it's important that we prioritize our self-care, we utilize all our vacation time that we have, maybe take a little more if you need to as well. So whenever you feel burnt out, whenever you feel stressed, you just take some time out. It's okay to take time out. So I used to feel really bad. The first 1 year that I worked, I took only 1 day's leave, and that's because I was hospitalized. But that's when it realized, or when it struck me, and I said, what am I doing? Like, I'm affecting my health. And that's going to affect me in the long run. So if I'm not healthy and if I don't take care of myself, then I'm never going to get where I want to be. So that was a wake-up call for me. And then since then, I've always taken ample time out for my vacations, for me to relax. I take a spa day whenever I need to. I just pamper myself. And that makes me so much more effective. So these are the major solutions. And now coming to the power moves. The first and the most important power move is to know your why. Know why you're doing what you're doing, the reason behind it. So it all starts with you thinking many years ahead and thinking about at the end of your life or when you're no more, what are going to people remember you by? What do you want to be, or who do you want to be remembered as? So you need to think about that. And then you backtrack everything and you come back to today and you think about what you want to do. Because whenever you're faced with trivial issues, whenever you're faced with challenges, you keep recalling your why. And that is what will keep you can stand your ground and you will not quit. If you don't know your why, if you don't have a clarity on what exactly you're doing and why you're doing it, then every little challenge will only make you want to quit. And that's when you will settle for mediocrity. So take some time out, take a whole day, take a few days, because it's not easy. This is a very difficult task. It's not easy for you to actually think about where you want to be at the end of your life. In fact, most people don't even want to get there because we are all scared of dying. We're scared of death, but that is something that's inevitable. So once we accept that and we think about it, you will have a very powerful move in your hand, which then, no matter what anybody does, will not let you give up. And that is something that will really make you successful. The next power move is to have clear goals. So once you know your why and you backtrack, then you need to start setting goals. Now, you might say, Sasha, everybody talks about this. Every motivational speaker talks about this. Every person delivering a webinar talks about this. And I totally agree. And from my working experience as well, I worked with some big firms. But one of the things was no firm gave much importance to setting goals. Everybody was only concerned about these day-to-day tasks that I'm supposed to do happening on time. But through my business, while I've been working, and especially because I'm in a sales business, I understand the importance of goals. And that's what I teach to every young professional that I deal with. I talk about having short-term goals. I talk about having financial goals. I talk about having personal goals, family goals, what kind of things they're going to do for their family. And that is their driving force. We set goals on a daily basis. We set goals on a weekly basis. We set monthly goals. We set yearly goals. Sometimes people think we are maniacs, but that's absolutely okay, because that gives us a sense of direction and we know exactly where we are heading. If you don't have goals, then we're like headless chickens and we just keep going wherever life takes us. So you need to have very clear goals, and there's a lot of information available online where you can learn how to set the right goals as well. And I would be more than happy to talk or chat and discuss or help anyone set clear goals for themselves as well. Now, coming to the third power move. And this is a game changer. Now, saying no. I used to be extremely bad at this. In fact, I'll say I'm still bad, and there's a long way for me to go to learn how to say no effectively. A lot of us think that if we want to get a promotion, we just need to please our manager and we need to say yes all the time in order to get there. But that is not true. So it's necessary for us to learn when to say no and how to say no effectively as well. We can't be people pleasers and be successful at the same time. We can't be leaders without being able to say no. So this is a very, very important thing. This is a whole other topic for another day. I cannot talk about it enough today, but keep this in mind and learn how to say no when you need to. If you can master this, nobody can stop you. And coming to the last and final power move is seek continuous learning and development. And this is what has kept me going. It has kept me young despite working for the last 16 years, but everybody still thinks that I am sweet 16. Everyone that's associated with me, everybody that talks to me, no, I'm not 16. But yes, in my mind, I am. And a lot of people think, or they don't even know my real age. It's because I'm dealing with so many young people every day. And when I keep learning and I keep growing, I keep expanding my knowledge, right? That's what keeps me motivated and keeps me sweet 16. So my biggest power move is to just keep learning. I started my career with HR, before that engineering, and then I learned graphic design, I learned web design, I learned, or at least I'm working on my public speaking skills, I'm working on webinars, I'm working on creating my podcast. Every time you catch me, I'm always learning something new while taking care of my business, while doing all my day-to-day activities without letting it get affected. But there's always something new that I find to learn. And although, yes, everybody talks about learning in terms of reading books, So I do agree, reading books will give you a lot of knowledge. But at the same time, we are lucky enough to be in this information age where we have access to a whole lot of information on the internet. And that's something that I really vouch for. So I use the internet not to browse and not just to, go through Instagram and YouTube, but to actually learn something and gain some knowledge from it on a daily basis. And this is what has kept me young. And this is what I wanted to share for today. That's my time. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I hope we could stay in touch and we can network as well.